By now, everyone has heard about the attack that Iran launched over the weekend into Israel. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones sent into the nation of Israel to try to do damage as much as possible. Fortunately, most of that weaponry did not have effect, thanks in large part to Israel's very successful application, the Iron Dome. But after the attack, there's a whole bunch of questions to be asked. How did we get here? Who's to blame? Where does it go from here? And frankly, are we really sure we ought to be backing up Israel as hard as we are on this one? My take on this might surprise you. So hold on, folks. We're going to get into all of this in just 1 second.
My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk.
Hi, folks. Brian Trippett here, the Front Porch Conservative, and I was wondering if I could ask for your help with something. My channel is getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you're not subbed to my channel, please do so. We're also getting very close to 200 subscribers on Rumble. If you're not subscribed there, please give me a sub. In simpler language, give me a sub in both places. Also, hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new material is coming out, be it a video or a live stream. And also, give me a thumbs up. Believe it or not, that helps with the algorithm. And with that, onto the video. As I said in my intro, by now most everyone in the United States and frankly around the world has heard about the Iranian attack on Israel that happened on Saturday. President Biden had mentioned that he'd received some warning through intelligence briefings that this might be the case, and sure enough, it turned out to be true. So let's take a look at some of the news, do a little bit of analysis, and give some takes on where I think it's going from here and what we ought to be doing. We start with the Associated Press. Israel says Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles, 99% of which were intercepted. Article written by Joseph Federman and John Gambrell. We have the following. Booms and air raid sirens sounded across Israel early Sunday after Iran launched hundreds of drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles in an unprecedented revenge mission that pushed the Middle East closer to a region-wide war. A military spokesman said the launches numbered more than 300, but 99% of them were intercepted. Calling the outcome, quote, a very significant strategic success, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said Iran fired 170 drones, more than 30 cruise missiles, and around 120 ballistic missiles. Of those, several ballistic missiles reached Israeli territory, causing minor damage to an air base. Rescuers said a 7-year-old girl in a Bedouin Arab town was seriously wounded in southern Israel, apparently in a missile strike, although they said police were still investigating the circumstances of her injuries. In Washington, President Joe Biden said U.S. forces helped Israel down nearly all of the drones and missiles and pledged to convene allies to develop a unified response. Okay, let's get into this. This situation in the Middle East has the capacity and the capability to get out of hand really fast. Reminds me of one of my favorite lines from The Hunt for Red October when Fred Thompson says to no one in particular, this thing will get out of control, this will get out of control and get us all killed. Well, I don't know about all of us, but it's going to get a significant number of people killed and has already gotten them killed already. So what happened here? Why is it that Iran felt the need to put a strike into Israel the first time that missiles had come in from an outside foreign country since the 1991 Gulf War? Well, I take you back to the Associated Press again for the following. Headline: Israeli strike on Iran's consulate in Syria killed 2 generals and 5 other officers, Iran said. Article written by Karim Chehiab and Albert Aji. We have the following. An Israeli airstrike that demolished Iran's consulate in Syria on Monday killed 2 Iranian generals and 5 officers, according to Iranian officials. The strike appeared to signify an escalation of Israel's targeting of military officials from Iran, which supports militant groups fighting Israel in Gaza and along its border with Lebanon. Since the war in Gaza began nearly 6 months ago, clashes have increased between Israel and Iran backed Hezbollah militants based in Lebanon. Hamas, which rules Gaza and attacked Israel on October 7th, is also backed by Iran. Israel, which rarely acknowledges strikes against Iranian targets, said it had no comment on the latest attack in Israel, although a military spokesman blamed Iran for a drone attack early Monday against a naval base in southern Israel. Israel has grown increasingly impatient with the daily exchanges of fire with Hezbollah, which have escalated in recent days, and warned of the possibility of a full-fledged war. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have also been launching long-range missiles toward Israel, including on Monday. The airstrike in Syria killed General Mohammad Reza Zahedi, who led the elite Kurd forces in Lebanon and Syria until 2016, according to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. It also killed Zahedi's deputy, General Mohammad Hadi Hajirahimi, and 5 other officers. Okay, let's take a little more time and talk about this. So you have an attack in Israel, which is prompted by an attack against an Iranian consulate in Lebanon. In other words, the Israelis launched an attack against a diplomatic outpost on foreign soil. Hold on to that thought. We're going to get into that in a few minutes, but just keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this. Now, fortunately for the people of Israel, most of what Iran launched didn't work, which is good news. And that sort of begs the question, why? Well, part of it is the effectiveness of Israel's missile defense system, otherwise known as the Iron Dome. But could it very well be, in part, that everybody had a heads up about what was coming? I take you to a report from Reuters, and I think this is worth talking about. Iran says it gave warning before attacking Israel. U.S. says that's not true. Article by Jeff Mason, Ahmed Rashid, and Samia Nakul, we have the following. Turkish, Jordanian, and Iraqi officials said on Sunday that Iran gave wide notice days before its drone and missile attack on Israel, but U.S. officials said Iran did not warn Washington and that it was aiming to cause significant damage. Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles on Saturday in a retaliatory strike after a suspected Israeli strike on its embassy compound in Syria. Most of the drones and missiles were downed before reaching Israeli territory, though a young girl was critically injured and there were widespread concerns of further escalation. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amirabdollahian said on Sunday that Iran gave neighboring countries and Israel's allies, the United States, 72-hour notice before it would launch the strikes. Turkey's foreign ministry said it had spoken to both Washington and Tehran before the attack, adding it had conveyed messages as an intermediary to be sure reactions were proportionate. Quote, Iran said the reaction would be in response to Israel's attack on its embassy in Damascus, and they would not go beyond this. We were aware of the possibilities. The developments were not a surprise, said a Turkish diplomatic source. One senior official in U.S. President Joe Biden's administration denied the statement, saying Washington did have contact with Iran through Swiss intermediaries, but it did not get notice 72 hours in advance. Quote, that is absolutely not true, the official said. They did not give a notification, nor did they give any sense of these will be the targets, so evacuate them. Well, am I surprised that the U.S. is denying the fact that they were maybe tipped off in advance that there was going to be an attack? No, not really. But you've got Jordanian officials, Iraqi officials, and Turkey officials all saying the same thing. Hey, we were advised by the Iranians this was coming. The Turkish officials are going so far as to say, hey, we were passing messages back and forth between Washington and Tehran, trying to act as some kind of an intermediary. Who am I to believe on this? No idea. But that's what's being said. I just put it out there for consumption. Make your own assertions. Personally, I'm willing to actually believe the Iraqis, the Jordanians, and the Turkish on this. They have no desire to see this thing escalate beyond where it is, and nobody wants war. Now, as far as where I personally come down on this thing, here's where I'm at. I'm going to back Israel. They are an ally in the region. They are the United States ally in the region. That said, however, I've got a problem with my ally launching a missile strike on a diplomatic outpost in another country, especially given who you're launching the diplomatic strike against. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got no love at all whatsoever for the current Iranian government as constituted. But that said, the Israelis launched a missile strike on a diplomatic outpost in Syria, which wasn't even a Syrian diplomatic outpost. It was the outpost of the Iranians. I mean, no offense to my ally in Israel, what did you think the Iranians were going to do? Just sit there and take it? Now, that might explain, in fact, why it is that the Iranians let everybody know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this is coming. Maybe they didn't launch their full capabilities. Maybe they're holding it back. Maybe they're holding it in reserve. That's a distinct possibility. And if you're wondering why I come to that conclusion, let me play a clip for you, an exchange between independent journalist Glenn Greenwald and Dr. John Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer is recognized as one of the most foremost minds on foreign policy. They were getting into a discussion about what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Iran, and the Middle East in general. Do me a favor and take a listen to this because it's very telling.
What are the kinds of things that Iran could do or might do in order to retaliate? Something it seems like they almost have to do, and what are the possible implications of that for the United States?
Well, the fact is that the Iranians don't want a war with the United States. They've been trying to avoid a war with the United States. They've gone to great lengths to communicate to us that they don't want a war. And of course, we don't want a war with them either. When we first put those 2 aircraft carriers and the other naval ships into the Mediterranean Sea, it was not so much to protect Israel. I mean, there was some of that at play, but it was mainly to make sure that the war didn't escalate and we didn't get dragged in. We don't want to get dragged into any wars in the Middle East. We're already fighting the Houthis. That's bad enough. But we don't want a war against Hezbollah, and we certainly don't want a war against Iran. And I think what's going on here, as I alluded to before, is I think the Israelis would like to get us into a war with Iran. And I don't think the Israelis would mind it at all if they got into a war with Hezbollah.
Ooh, now there's an awful lot to unpack in that statement, so let's talk about it for a minute. I don't necessarily think Mearsheimer is wrong in his assessment. Nobody wants a war here. Now, I'm not saying that the Iranians' hands are clean on this thing. And when I say the Iranians, let me be very clear. I have no problem whatsoever with the people of Iran. As a matter of fact, it is my prayer that someday that citizenry enjoys freedom much like we do here in the United States. Not the exact same kind of government, not the exact same everything, but as God's children, that they enjoy freedom and prosperity for themselves as opposed to being ruled by the kind of government they've got right now. The Iranian government, their hands are not clean in this matter, and they haven't been clean for 40 or 50 years. But they've got the good sense to realize war doesn't benefit anybody. We, on the other hand, definitely do not need to be getting into another foreign conflict or a foreign entanglement anywhere else in the world. God knows we have too much of that going on right now. So I think Mearsheimer is correct. Now, as to his assertion, would the Israelis like to get us into a broader conflict with Iran if it benefits them in their struggle against Hezbollah? Not saying he's wrong, not saying he's right. That's his take on it. Haven't seen any evidence to prove it one way or the other, but I put it out there for public consumption. So Iran attacks Israel. Israel attacked Iran to start the whole thing. Biden, and I'll give him credit on this one, is doing his dead level best to keeping this thing very confined and keeping it from further escalating. You don't believe me? Check out this article from the Times of Israel. Not seeking war. White House stresses U.S. will not join Israeli counterstrike on Iran. New York Times reports Biden dissuaded PM from launching response when they spoke after Iranian attack. Senior American official, Israel, quote, made clear it's not seeking significant escalation. Article by Jacob Maged and various agencies. We have the following. U.S. President Joe Biden told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the United States would not participate in any Israeli counteroffensive against Iran, a senior administration official said on Sunday. Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel on Saturday night in response to a suspected Israeli attack on Iran's Syria consulate on April 1st that killed 7 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps members, including 2 generals. In a statement issued late on Saturday following the attacks, Biden said he told Netanyahu that Israel had, quote, demonstrated a remarkable capacity to defend itself and defeat even unprecedented attacks, sending a clear message to its foes that they cannot effectively threaten the security of Israel. Biden did not say in the statement whether he and Netanyahu discussed a possible Israeli response or potential U.S. involvement, though the Axios news site reported immediately after the call that the president said he would oppose any counterattack by Israel and that the premier should, quote, take the win. Okay. Now, like I say, this is one of those rare moments when I give Joe Biden credit for something. Mark it down on your calendars. This is somewhat historic given this social media channel. Biden is being smart in this case, although the decisions that he made that led us to this point aren't exactly helping matters, and I'll get to that in a minute. But for the moment, he's being very smart. He does not want to see this thing escalate out of control. I don't think anybody does. Now, I say I'm not real thrilled with the things he's done that's led us to this point. I've got a couple of bones of contention, and I will point them out right now. This is an article from the Washington Free Beacon. Biden administration renews Iran sanctions waiver that unlocks upwards of $10 billion for the regime. This is an article by Adam Credo from March. The Biden administration on Wednesday reapproved a sanctions waiver that unlocks upwards of $10 billion in frozen funds for the Iranian government, according to a copy of the notice submitted to Congress late Wednesday and reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon. The sanctions waiver, which has drawn fierce GOP opposition on Capitol Hill, allows Iraq to transfer electricity payments to Iran via third-party countries. The sanctions waiver was last approved by the Biden administration in November and set to expire this month, putting the White House in a tight position as a mounting chorus of GOP lawmakers expressed concerns about the sanctions being bypassed. The authority granted in the latest waivers allows Iraq to convert dinars into euros and transfer payments into Iranian bank accounts in Oman. Not exactly a good situation. One more thing. This is from Breitbart. Biden let UN sanctions on Iran missiles expire before unprecedented Israel attack. Article written by Francis Martel. We have the following. The administration of leftist Joe Biden did not move to renew expiring sanctions on Iran's drone and ballistic missile production at the United Nations in October, shortly after the Iran-backed massacre of an estimated 1,200 people in Israel and Saturday's unprecedented direct missile assault by Iran on the country. The Iranian military spent much of the past week threatening retaliation against Israel in response to a military operation targeting senior officials of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and an arm of the Iranian military and the U.S. designated terrorist organization. The operation resulted in the elimination of 7 Iranian terrorists, mostly prominent among them Quds Forces commander Mohammad Reza Dehadi. Nobody's hands really are clean in this whole thing, be it the U.S. administration led by Joe Biden, the Iranians, or the Israelis. All the more reason why I think George Washington's old admonition about avoiding foreign entanglements becomes even more pressing in this hour. So like I say, it's about to get, hopefully, calmed down a little bit. We'll see what happens. The next move is up to Israel. However, they might be our friend, and they are definitely our ally. But I got to call it like I see it. Israel got a drone and missile attack in response to something that they did on their own. They shot missiles into Lebanon and shot them at a diplomatic outpost of a foreign nation. Like I said, what did you think the Iranians were going to do? Not do anything at all? They can't do that lest they lose face in the Middle East. But then again, and I say this as a cautionary tale to the government of Israel for what it's worth, guys, you kind of got off lucky on this one. The Iranians, if you believe the reports, told everybody it was coming. If you also believe the reports, it doesn't take too much to figure out that Washington probably put a phone call into Tel Aviv and said, hey guys, there's a missile attack coming from Iran. Just get ready for it. That might go a long way to explain why the Iron Dome was so effective in this matter. But these are just observations from a fellow wearing a fedora safely ensconced in the United States. But I tell you one thing, this thing is absolutely exactly like that line from Red October. It has the potential to get out of control. What happens next is up to the Israelis. But that's what I think about it. What do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number two, hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new material is coming out, be it a video or a live stream. Number three, leave a comment below. Number four, share the video around. And finally, give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I will see you next time.